This is the channel for the woman who's done playing small, the woman who knows there's a fire in her belly, a voice in her bones, and a destiny she's done apologizing for. If you're ready to unleash the woman you were born to be, hit subscribe and join the movement. I'm Leona Schrock, and let's rise together.
If I was to ask you who you are and you can't attach it to what you do, could you answer me? Could you give me a 5 minute, or not a 5 minute, a 1 minute elevator speech? So the other day I was watching this movie and I had this flashback of when I had the crashing moment and the realization that I was living my life according to what people had expected of me. And I was living my life from a place of pure conditioning and not who I truly was. And asking the question, who are you truly? And not attaching yourself to what you do can feel really uncomfortable because it's your heart, it's your soul, it's the way that God has designed you to be. And we hide a lot of times behind our doingness because we don't feel safe in our beingness. And when I was watching this movie, it brought me back today even to if I was to describe myself in an elevator speech, could I do that without attaching myself to what I do? Because when you think about the fact of how often when some like people ask you, so what do you do for a living? It's a common question. People don't typically ask you, so who are you? And if they do, we immediately kind of jump into, oh, I'm a mom, I'm a business owner, or I work here, or, you know, whatever your explanation is, because it's where we've attached our identity to. And whilst that's a part of who you are, that is not who you truly are. And how we think about ourselves and what we feel about ourselves and how we experience ourselves is how we will live our life. It's how you create your life. You create your life from your identity. This is why I do identity work and why I'm so passionate about it because your external world is a reflection of your internal world. And if you want to change your life, then identity work is the most powerful work that you'll do because you can't control your circumstances, but you can control the internal stories. You can rewrite them and you can renew your mind and you can create new neural pathways. You're never stuck. And one of the reasons that we feel stuck a lot of times is because we get stuck in the story because it's comfortable and we feel valid and we feel like it's legit. And it's like, but you don't understand. And it's like, no, I do understand. It's time for you to let it go. Okay. So going back to when I had my moment where my soul felt like it was crushed and it was split into a million pieces, and I felt devastated, really, really devastated. I believe it's going on 8 years. It might be nine. I would have to look into one of my old phones and or pull out the court papers. And I'm not even sure that I still have the court papers. But the point of this story is it was January 4th. I was going to work and I was driving just in my own little world, and there was a crossroad that was hidden. Like it came, I was on a main road and you couldn't see the vehicles coming from the crossroad because it was like there was hills and it was snowing, it was cold, but it wasn't snowy enough that where the weather roads were bad. And all of a sudden I saw this flash out of the corner of my eyes, and the next thing was a crunch and a whoomp, and I look forward and my whole world is I see a vehicle coming this way and it felt because it feels like when it's happening, like you're never going to stop. A truck came this way and we collided at 100 miles per hour. That was a total impact. We weren't going 100, but between him and I, and my whole truck flipped across the road down into the ditch, just missing a telephone pole and just missing a tree. And the opposite end, the vehicle that I saw coming was a fire chief. What are the odds? And so I remained conscious the whole time. It was this like, oh my gosh, like I have to get out of here. I remember the feeling of, I just like stop. The truck just needs to stop so I can get out of here. However, By the time that I obviously had stopped and I go to get out, and by the time I unbuckle myself, I can't open the truck door because I'm like literally flipped almost upside down, but enough that I would have to have the ability to push the truck door open. I mean, I probably could have at that point if I really wanted to and had the fire chief not been there because you literally feel like you can climb mountains because your adrenal is so high. And instantly the fire chief came over and he was like, ma'am, ma'am, ma'am. And he's like, hold still, hold still. What part of my body do you think is going to hold still? Like, I just went into complete survival. And he's like, are you okay? Well, I didn't realize at the time that when the airbag went off, because the stench is horrendous. They could just put some air fresheners in there or something. That would be majorly improvement. Not that any of us ever want to get in an accident. The stench was horrendous, and the noise of it. My first thought was, "Is this truck going to blow up?" It was my dream truck. I had bought it 6 months prior. I had worked so hard. I had put down $20,000 on this truck, and it was like, "Oh my gosh, I finally have it!" Right? And so, but obviously, at the time, I wasn't stressed about the truck. And um, but I asked him, I was like, am I gonna blow up? So I need to get out of here. And he was like, no, you're not gonna blow up. It's fine. He was instantly on it to make sure there was no leaks. So I had to wait until the paramedics came and they could wedge the door open because he couldn't get open as well. He didn't have what he needed on him. And finally got me out of there. And of course, they're all saying, hold still, move slow. You don't know that you don't have anything broken. And I'm over here. If you guys don't get out of my way, I'm going to run for miles because my adrenal, I now understand why they say that people will actually walk away from an accident with half their leg missing. Not a clue that it's missing because you have no sense of feeling. You are literally in pure survival. And so when they were telling me to, move slow, I'm like, I'm fine. Do you guys not see I am okay? They're like, no, we need to take you in the ambulance. So I sit in the ambulance and he takes all of my vitals and he's checking me and he's like, are you sure you're okay? That like the collision that you just had is not typical for somebody to be walking away, making sure that they're okay. And I'm over here. I'm fine. And all I keep thinking about myself is do not inject me with anything because I grew up with the horrors of my mom having mental health issues and what it was a lot deeper than all of that, but she had reactions to some of her medications. And I'm like, whatever you do, you're not injecting my body with nothing. Like, not happening. Don't put a needle near me. I don't like needles, anyways, but don't even think about it. And so when he checked me for, because he's like, you probably have a seatbelt mark. Like everybody gets a seatbelt mark. I just want to make sure, like press your stomach, all the different things. And so when I pulled my shirt back and he looks at me and he goes, I don't remember the exact words, but like you don't even the look on his face was shocked of you don't even have a mark of your seatbelt on you. Like, how did this even happen? That's typically the very least that somebody has. He goes, because they just came back with the reports of, whatever they do. And your collision was literally at 100 miles per hour approximately. And I remember sitting there dazed, and you can't fully comprehend and grasp other than something big just happened right now and it doesn't truly make sense. But I knew that I was a walking miracle in that moment. And at the time, my ex-husband, we were still married. He came and he's like, I want you to go to the hospital. I'm like, no, I'm not going to the hospital. I'm absolutely not. Just get me away from everybody. I just need to like be left alone for a hot second. So obviously I still had to give the report to the state trooper. And we're sitting there and I'm sitting in the trooper car and they're cleaning up the accident. And as I'm sitting there and I'm watching them and I'm thinking about, you know, this could have ended so differently. And whilst, yeah, I was disappointed that I had worked so hard for this truck and it was now wrecked into pieces, and I knew that it was going to be totaled, what really hit me at the core was I was in this daze, but my soul was so like it felt like there was this ache in my soul of if I would not have made it out today, would I have felt like I made a big enough impact in this world? Would I have felt like I touched enough lives? Would I felt like I was on purpose in my life? Would I felt like I did what it took? Would I felt like I walked out my calling and what God designed for me to do? And then I asked myself the question, how would my kids have described me? Whilst I know when somebody passes, typically everybody says all the best things. And it wasn't that I felt like my kids wouldn't have anything good to say about me because I know that they truly would have, but it didn't hit. And I remember the trooper was asking me questions at the time. And it was by the grace of God that I just even answered the questions because I was there, but I wasn't there. And it was in that moment that I was forever changed. I did go to the doctors the next day because everybody had a fit and they're like, you have to go to the doctors. Because I had everybody on edge because within the next 24 hours, typically when your body starts calming down, that's when things start happening. And I felt like I was under the magnifying glass. Like, are you okay? Are you going to fall over? You can have a concussion, whatever. So I went to the doctor the next day and I got fully checked out. And it was literally the same reaction from each doctor. It was looking at the report. Do you know how many people do not walk away alive from something like this? It was always like the shock, the stun, and then, is this actually you that was in this? And my response was always the same. Do you know God? That is the only explanation that I have for this miracle that I am. And every doctor that had the reaction, I had the same reaction with inside of me. I've got to do something different with my life. I have been living my life under the expectations of other people and the conditioning of other people. And I can no longer do this. The next part, what came, is what most of us resist, and is what terrifies most of us. And even though obviously you don't have to be in an accident to have that moment where you are just jolted and your whole life can never go back to how it was before because you can't unexperience what your soul has just experienced. And that I used to joke about like not only was there an actual impact that was made that day, the physical impact, but the internal impact. It crushed, my truck got crushed and my soul got crushed, but to the best way possible because it took me straight into my passion. Now, my journey was not ooh, suddenly I knew what I wanted to do. It was absolutely none of the above, actually, for months. And it was crazy because I had so many people be like, oh my gosh, you're a walking miracle. I'm so glad that you're alive. And I didn't feel the connection. I knew logically that I was the walking miracle, but where the disconnection was happening inside of me was everything that used to light me up prior to this, like, was gone. And I remember I would sit in rooms and I would just watch people and I would question, what is my purpose? Like, I get emotional even thinking about it to this day because I would lay awake at night Googling, how do I discover what my purpose is? I couldn't stop. I became obsessed with it because I was like, I cannot live my life like this. I nothing, it was like this dark moment of my life of yes, I'm grateful that I'm alive, but I don't really even know who I am at this point. And I was seeking a simple answer, and there was no simple answer. And then also, suddenly, when you feel like you're just showing up every day in your life, but nothing matters anymore because there is a bigger fire burning on the inside of your soul that is desiring to come out of you, that is desiring for you to be lit up, but yet you feel like you're suffocating, you feel like you're drowning. And it's like there's all of this noise in the world, but yet you're stuck on the inside of yourself. And you realize that nobody actually can come give you the answers except for you got to find the answers within inside of yourself, which can feel overwhelming and can feel exhausting because it's like, how am I supposed to find the answers within inside of myself if I don't even know who the fuck I am? And this is how some people will live their whole life. I was truly grateful for this moment of, oh my gosh. But it's also when my whole life began to fall apart, literally, because I had built my life from an identity that wasn't mine. I had built my life from being conditioned and people's expectations. I had not created a life from the way that God had designed me. And this is often where, when you do identity work and things start falling apart and shit starts hitting the fan, we will revert back to what's familiar because it's like, well, what am I doing wrong? You're not doing anything wrong. You're actually doing everything right. And people that no longer align with your life will start falling away, whatever way that looks like. And even your jobs, whatever is no longer aligned. And so if you allow yourself to go deep enough and to experience the discomfort and go and navigate through the dark caves of your soul and shed the light on all the places that you have been living on. And you allow yourself to look at those stories that are webbed on the inside of you, and you allow yourself to unweb them to discover the identity of who God truly designed you to be. That is when your life will shift. But it's not a one-time thing. And to really discover what your purpose isn't boxable. It's not something that it's something that you're going to go on a journey to discovery. And in your identity work is when you will unwrap and unveil your purpose. And I was looking to define it of like that one thing. I know that I'm made to do this. And then once I know that I'm made to do this, then that's when I'm going to find fulfillment. But you can't find fulfillment until you're actually connected in your inner knowing, in your inner beingness of knowing who you truly are. And that is always going to change because we are made to evolve and we are made to grow. And this is where I say you have so many gifts on the inside of you that are waiting to be opened up. Hence the fact that it's Christmas season, right? It's like all these gifts that would be wrapped underneath the Christmas tree and they would stay there year after year after year. Wouldn't you want to know what is in those gifts? Wouldn't you want to be like, well, what is actually in there? The same is going on for within inside of you. You have gifts that you're not even aware of because you haven't even accessed them because you've been living from a conditioned place. But what if those tugs on your soul? What if the fact that you feel the life is being sucked out of you? What about the fact that you might feel overwhelmed, exhausted, and burnt out is not a bad thing? It's simply signaling to you that you are out of alignment and it's time for you to go deeper within inside of yourself of who you truly are. Because we make all of our choices and we create our life from a place of how we think and how we feel about ourselves. You are going to take very different action coming from a place of knowing that you are chosen, knowing that you are loved, knowing that you are valuable, knowing that what you have inside of you is of value. The gifts that you have are of value. And when you come from a place of knowing that you are provided for, that you are protected, that you are taken care of, versus if you're coming from a place of trying to prove yourself, and where you're coming from a place of you don't feel safe, you don't feel like you're provided for, you don't feel like you're protected, that strong hyper independence. I used to live from the strong and hyper independent woman. I don't need nobody. What you doing here? Get out of here. Last time I trusted somebody or the last time I asked somebody to help me, they didn't show up. Yeah, ain't about to go down that path again. I had the gates of my heart locked down, loaded, and I threw away the key. You weren't accessing it because I was not going there. It's only been the last 2 years that I have really started to drop the walls and let people come in. Now I'm like, yes. How can I ask people for more support? How can I have where because I build teams now in my own business and in the house renovation business. So it's like I see the power of when people come together and how you bring out other people's gifts. And when you're in your gifts and you collaborate with people, you bring out their gifts and it's a win-win for everybody. There's so many times where we are bypassing ourselves and we are disservicing ourselves and we are taking from ourselves because we don't feel safe to feel provided, to be provided for, or to be protected. And so this is where it's really important for you to know who you are. And if you don't know fully if you, I don't want to say fully because I don't even fully know who I am yet. I'm still doing, we're always going to be doing that work. But if you don't have some idea of who you are, then it's going to be really, really hard for you to build the life of your dreams. So if you want to build the life of your dreams, disconnect from what you want to have and tap into who you are. Because that's the place that you're going to start living from. That's the place that you're going to start making your decisions from. Okay. Because when we don't feel worthy, we don't take big action. When we don't, or little action for that. And I'm going to give you a fine example of when I was at an event in October. So it's been a hot second that I was at an event. Just I'm not even sure why. It was kind of like life happened and things proceeded on. And I was working, I had coaches in my life, but there is nothing like being at an in-person event. And I'm going to create an in-person event yet. There's some stories that I have wrapped around. I've had a lot of people ask me to put a retreat together, and I'm like, oh, that's going to be massive action, right? And in this, I was at this event, and she had ways to work with her, and I had some inner things come up on the inside of me of like, ooh, I don't know, in my soul, I knew that I wanted to join one of the groups, but my head was telling me a different story, and I remember on the drive home, I told myself that in a month from now, I would be in one of the programs. It was one of the programs that I wanted to join. I didn't know how it was going to happen, but I remember locking in. And when you have that decision that you're going to make where you're like, I'm going to do this and it's going to happen, and I don't know how it's going to happen. But I also realized that what was going on in that moment was this was touching my own inner worth. This was touching my own belief system of, do I feel worthy of investing this much in myself? Because it was more than I've ever invested in myself. I was meeting my inner edge. And then it was also the fact of like, am I going to be provided for? Like, is the money going to come back? Even though I know because I've done this before. I've done this many, many, many times before. But this time, I thought because when I went to the event, I had made a place. I bought the VIP ticket because I'm like, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to go all the way, and I'm going to come from a place of abundance and knowing that I will be provided for, and knowing that I'm worthy of this. And so when you go into decisions like that, you show up very differently. The energy shifts of like, ooh, I don't know, and not that if you show up in that it can't work, because it absolutely will. This is where you're invited into. Look, and this is where the identity work comes in. This is where, yeah, you can meditate and you can journal and you can affirm all day long, but the actual change that is going to come in your life where you really tap in and unleash of who you truly are and tap into that inner knowingness of your identity is when you take action in the discomfort. It's when you meet your own inner edge and you rewrite the story and you choose differently, you shift your energy. That is really when you're going to start blazing the trail in your own life. Because I was actually in that program within 2 weeks because I had a 6-hour drive home. And in that 6-hour drive home, I I processed everything. It was one of the most uncomfortable drives home. Typically I fly, but for whatever reason, I followed my intuition of driving this time. And on my drive home, I knew why I chose to drive because I was fidgeting because I couldn't go do something to distract myself. I had to be with myself to process what I had just experienced at that event, which was one of the most potent, the most powerful shifts that could have happened in my time. Because by the time I got home from that 6-hour drive, so many things had already changed in my life. I had cut so many things off in my life in the 6 hours. You can get a lot done in 6 hours. And so, but I remember I coached myself through it and I asked myself, where am I not trusting? Where do I not feel worthy yet to invest that deeply in myself? Because nobody in my bloodline has ever invested in myself. So understanding also when you're doing something that's very different than from the way that you were raised, then it's going to feel uncomfortable. But that's beautiful. That's where you have the power to break the generational curses. That's where you create that massive shift in your life and you shift into your identity and you blaze a new trail for your bloodline. And so, with that being said, was I terrified when I invested in myself and I said yes 2 weeks later? I don't even know that it was 2 weeks later, actually, because I came home and then I traveled to Georgia because I had a client move that I was doing. And, oh my gosh, my brain just shit. Oh, and we had a session right after that where she had a follow up. And before I even knew what I was doing, I said yes, because I just knew. And that night, I was at war with my old identity and my new identity because I was like, oh my gosh, what if my kids starve? What if I don't have enough money to feed my kids and make my house payment? And yada, yada, yada. All these doubts and struggles came up. And then on the other side of me, I was literally like flip flopping in my sleep forth, back and forth, because then I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited for this future. I'm so excited because I know for me, showing up for myself in such a powerful way is going to just create a whole new world for me because I know that I'm worthy and deserving. And then it was back over here, like, oh my gosh, I think I made the dumbest decision that I've ever done. This was really not a smart time to do this right now. What am I doing and what am I thinking? I just invested here to go to the event. And now I'm investing again here. And then on the other side of it was like, yes, I did the right thing. I made the right choices. And this is, my soul was just lit up. But I was at war with old identity, new identity, going back and forth. And this is where you get to actually let go and you get to go deeper inside of yourself and trust inside of yourself and know that you're only meeting your subconscious parts of yourself that have been suppressed on the inside of you. You're unlocking, it has now come forward. And I had questioned earlier, what is some of my subconscious programming? Because I know some of the math is not mathing in my life. Well, hello, and here we are because I met some of my subconscious programming. And it was such a massive shift. And I felt for weeks like I was losing my mind. I felt for weeks like I was going crazy. And I finally was like, I am losing some of my mind. I am losing some of my mind as far as my old mindsets, which is what is so potent and so powerful. But I had to navigate through the discomfort because I didn't know this version of me that had been suppressed for so long. I was meeting a part of me that had always been there, but had been suppressed through the stories. So wrapping this up in one bow package for Christmas, Merry Christmas. This is the week of Christmas when this comes out. Yes. And I want to ask a question before I end this is what is your desire to truly experience this Christmas? What do you truly, what would make your soul feel like it is just lit up and it is so magical for you to experience this Christmas? And with the final ending of wrapping this up, I want to say to you, who do you believe at your core that you are without attaching yourself to any identity, to what you do? Because you are so powerful. You are so magical. You are so vibrant. Yes, you have something that people need, that people are praying for, whatever your gifts are. We feel people before we even hear them. I want you walking in rooms in 2026 like you own that room, like God sent you there because He did. And be so magnetic and be so unapologetic and be so grounded and be so rooted in who God designs you to be. See you next episode. As always, go be unstoppable, live big, and